green. It looks like we're streaming
We
out.
need Jim Chuck. He says he's, however, my picture has not popped up yet. It says I'm connected. Let him know that I'm still having trouble, Patty. Muted.
So he is unmuted now, and he should be coming up. There
That
we go.
just popped
Oh,
up.
there he
Outs.
is.
I actually figured it out. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Completti,
Okay.
we're green on this side. The meeting is yours now.
We're good. Okay, thanks, Ken. Welcome to the Lyon Township Planning Commission meeting for Monday, June 8th, 2020. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the
flag
flag
Of the
United States of
America and to the republic
for which it
stands,
and
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
liberty
liberty
and justice
for all.
for all.
All right, very good. Kelly, if you take roll, please.
Patricia Carconi,
Here.
Jim Chuck,
Here.
Michael Conflitti,
Here.
Stephen Hoffman,
Here.
Kurt Radke,
Here.
Carl Town.
here.
Very good. We'll need to excuse Mr. Pennington.
So moved.
Support.
Kelly, if you take roll on that, please.
Sure. Patricia Carconi,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Michael Conflitti,
Yes.
Stephen Hoffman,
Yes.
Kurt Radke,
Yes.
Carl Town.
Yes.
All right, very good. Approval of tonight's agenda. Chris, any changes?
No, sir.
All right,
Motion to approve if there are no changes.
there's Mr. Chuck.
Yes.
Support.
Support by Mr. Radke. Kelly, take roll, please.
Kurt Radke,
Yes.
Carl Town,
Yes.
Stephen Hoffman,
Yeah.
Michael Conflitti,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Patricia Carconi.
Yes.
All right, very good. Consent agenda, May 27, 2020 minutes. We will vote on that our next meeting since we don't have that.
That would be my motion to postpone.
Okay.
I'll support that motion.
Motion support by who supported?
I was one of the two. I'm not sure. It might have been Stefan.
Kurt.
No.
Kurt did.
Kurt did. Fine.
All right, we'll give it to Kurt. Kelly, roll on
Yep.
that.
Michael Conflitti,
Yeah, yes.
Radke,
Yes.
Carl Town,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Patricia Carconi,
Yes.
Stephen Hoffman.
Yes.
All right, very good. I'm assuming Tina's not here tonight. Okay. Chris, if you'd start us off, AP 20-10B DDT3 Lyon Township Phase 2. We're going to combine special land use and site plan, if you would.
Absolutely. Thank you. Phase 2 for DDT3 proposes to construct 632 parking spaces on a 39.85 acre lot just south of Grand River in the Quadrants Industrial Park. Phase 1 utilized existing parkation and circulation infrastructure to begin occupancy at below capacity levels while they were finalizing plans for Phase 2. In addition to these parking modifications, a canopy is proposed to be added to the east side of the Unit 5 building. The site is in the Wellhead Protection Overlay District and must be reviewed in accordance with the applicable procedures and land uses in Article 6 and the procedures from the Wellhead Protection Overlay District in Article 42. The Planning Commission held the required public hearing during the February 10th, 2020 meeting, during which site plan and special land use were reviewed for Phase 1 of the project. And Phase 1 was approved after recommendation to the board. Phase 2 will undergo the same review procedures as Phase 1 with the Planning Commission review and action on the site plan coupled with a special land use recommendation to the Township Board. The board will then take the final action on the special land use. So going through the criteria for the standards for site plan review, much of these standards are related to the building, which was previously approved, aside from the canopy. So they don't necessarily apply just to the parking lot, but there are a few items from these standards which I want to point out. The first is outdoor lighting. During the first application for Phase 2 of DD23, the standards for lighting at the lot lines exceeded what our maximum standards were, but the revision going up and down the access lane to Grand River Avenue has been brought into compliance. I just want to note that the eastern side of that access lane is a lot line, and so that is where the lot illumination can't exceed half a foot candle. The west side of it is not a lot line, and so it can be a little higher than that 0.5 foot candle maximum. The next thing I want to note is that we, in our review, noted that the specifications for the fixtures that we're going in are proposed to be 25 feet. After speaking with the applicant, they revised that, and it was in the plans in a different space, and noted that it complies with our 22-foot height maximum. And so the light poles will meet the maximum height standard, and the photometric plan is based off that 22-foot height. So there really isn't a problem with those light poles meeting our standards. The next item I want to go to is parking and circulation. The proposed plans show a 585 space parking lot to the west of the building and a realignment of the previously approved parking to ensure access for delivery vans for loading purposes. The circulation plan shows employees with personal vehicles enter and exiting the access drive on Grand River Avenue, while delivery vehicles enter through the access drive and exit on Automation Boulevard, and trucks will both enter and exit on Automation Boulevard. There is one item we want to note about barrier-free parking space. The first iteration of this plan showed 6 barrier-free parking spaces, and with the number of proposed parking spaces, 632, an additional 8 would be required. Where the 8 additional were proposed is in the parking row that is to the southeast of the existing building. And in our letter, we state that that location doesn't necessarily meet the standard that it be the nearest and most direct route to the building. However, we have had more conversations with the applicant, and after talking with him, it sounds like those spaces are intended for use by delivery drivers who won't enter the building, and they believe that they are in the best position, the closest and best position for where they will be on site. And so we really defer to the Planning Commission about whether that's most appropriate. If the users of those spaces do need to enter the building, they are probably not in an adequate location. However, if the users of those spaces do not enter the building and instead go to nearby vans, then we find they probably are in an adequate location. The next item that I wanted to note for you guys was the tree replacement category in our landscaping section. A tree inventory has not been prepared. In its place, the applicant has noted the maximum number for this site, which would be 352 trees requiring replacement. Tree replacements are not required in areas for driveways and parking lots, but given the lack of an inventory, the maximum calculation for replacement is being utilized, and that number again is 352. Sheet L101 notes that there are 177 trees being proposed on the property, 151 of which are required per the ordinance for a parking lot and green space calculation. So that means that 26 of the proposed trees may be counted towards the replacements. The balance 326 trees are proposed to be covered in locations off-site. This would be accomplished through a contribution to the Township Tree Fund. The plans estimate a cost of $500 per tree, which is a total anticipated contribution of $163,000. So those were the issues that I wanted to bring up for the site plan review portion of it. We list several conditions in the recommendation, one of which the light poles we believe to be resolved because the height does indeed, as noted in the plans, does indeed meet the 22-foot height limitation. Our recommendation for the barrier-free parking spaces is something that we would defer to the Planning Commission on as to whether their location is adequate. And then, of course, the special land use approval by the Township Board. So now I'm going to go into our special land use review. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Because the location is in the wellhead protection district, triggers a special land use review, and the first portion of that are 9 standards for granting special use approval. And I'll go through those for you guys now. We believe that the use is compatible with the adjacent industrial uses, and that the buffer, there's an adequate buffer between this use and the residential uses to the south. We also find that compatible with the master plan, which shows this in the future land use map as an industrial area. I do want to go to item 4 of the special land use review, impact on traffic, which states that the location of the proposed special land use within the zoning district shall minimize impact of traffic generated by the proposed use. And we do want to note that traffic impact study has been finalized, and improvements to be constructed include a turn lane that tapers at the driveway, the parking lot, and improved striping at Automation Boulevard. We understand that the applicant will be participating in a traffic light at the intersection of Automation Boulevard and Grand River Avenue. All intersections are anticipated to continue to operate at a level of service D or better. The next item, detrimental effects, states that the proposed special land use shall not involve any activities, processes, materials, equipment, or conditions of operations which shall not be located or designed so as to be detrimental or hazardous to public health, welfare, or safety. The proposed site plan application is accompanied by an operational narrative that addresses the required information for an industrial activity statement. According to the narrative, there will be no manufacturing or finishing of component parts on the subject site, and only the distribution process will take place on the site. Approval of the special land use will not cause the isolation of residential areas. And we believe that we agree with the operational narrative that describes Amazon Logistics with the intent to provide last mile deliveries for customers. The next item I want to jump to is number 9, compatibility with the natural environment, which states the proposed special land use shall be compatible with the natural environment and conserve natural resources and energy. The proposed plan incorporates large areas of impervious pavement where a large stand of trees exists today. As we note in our related site plan review, the maximum number of trees replacements required by the ordinance is 352. We'd also like to note that there's a man-made pond that will be filled as part of this plan. And we understand that Eagle has conceptually approved the fill of this pond. Based on these observations, the plan does not reflect an attempt to minimize impact on natural characteristics of the site and the standards of the wellhead overlay district must also be met. The standards aim to maintain the subsurface quality of water in the township. The next portion of our Spencer land use review relates to that wellhead protection overlay district. And there are just a couple items that I would like to highlight for you all. The first is the service and facility structures. The majority of the parcels on which the parking lot and driveway will be constructed fall within the overlay district. The parking lot will introduce a large amount of impervious surface to the site, but will not introduce hazardous materials that would be expected to negatively impact the quality of the subsurface water. Contaminants from improperly maintained delivery vehicles such as oil, antifreeze, and gasoline could be filtered through the use of oil separators or similar. And we believe the applicant should address if any of these filtration systems are proposed.
I see.
The next item I want to highlight for you is number 5, conditions of section 42-10, which states that the township board may grant special land use approval only upon finding that the proposed use meets the following standards. We're not aware of negative impacts on the quality or quantity of water available in the overlay district that would result in this project. And we anticipate that if infiltration rates remain the same for the property, potential contaminants are filtered out and impact would be minimal. We do, however, find the proposed parking lot will substantially change the wooded character of the property. The large impervious surface will require removal of a substantial number of trees and will change the natural drainage patterns of the site. The man-made pond on the property will be filled and replaced by an engineered detention facility. Ultimately, we find that the proposed phase 2 improvements should not introduce hazards detrimental to the quality or quantity of surface or underground water, so long as the runoff is controlled by the township's engineering standards and appropriate filtration features are incorporated into the stormwater management system. So subject to the results of the public hearing and the Plan Commission's finding that the 2 outstanding items listed on the site plan review have been satisfied, we find it appropriate to recommend approval of the special land use to the township board. So thank you for being patient with me. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, we'll hold off on questions. Why don't you go to the next, to the site plan, phase 2?
I'm sorry.
We just did the
Yep,
site plan
yep.
first.
I'm sorry. Why don't we hold off on questions until we hear from Lisa and Leslie, if everyone doesn't mind.
No, not at
Sounds
all.
good.
Okay.
Okay. I'd just like to reference our June 5th review letter, which is in your packet tonight. A couple of items regarding the site plan under our general comments. Item number 7, a 10-foot wide pedestrian pathway as required was shown conceptually along Grand River Avenue along the frontage of the wetlands commercial parcel, which is the western parcel that is holding the majority of the parking. We were informed verbally that the path was proposed to be installed as part of phase 3 construction. However, I just wanted to note for the record, we would expect that to be constructed as part of phase 2. Under the utility plans, we have referenced items that would require fire marshal approval. The storm sewer and stormwater detention, the detention basin proposed does meet the engineering standards. regarding Grand River and Automation Boulevard improvements. The recommended improvements in the draft traffic study have shown at the Wetlands Commercial Park entrance drive, the Western Drive, deceleration as well as passing lanes along Grand River. Additional pavement striping on Automation Boulevard to delineate approach lanes to Grand River is also shown. And those improvements are proposed at the Road Commission right now. We have not received copy of any approvals, but I know they are under review. Also, the applicant is proposing to signalize the intersection of Grand River and Automation Boulevard, and this is also under review at the Road Commission right now. And that concludes our report. Happy to answer any questions. If you have any issues with the special land use.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Let's go to Lisa next. If there's anything Lisa's got for us.
Yeah, I wanted to address the easement for the access drive on parcel A. We'll need an easement agreement in a separate document that can be recorded with the Register of Deeds. We have a survey, and the survey that we have is typically attached as an exhibit to the actual easement document. So we will need a separate document that can be recorded. I would suggest that when that's drawn up, the uses that are permitted on that parcel C are specified in more detail. Right now it shows access. I think just to be clear, it should be maybe ingress and egress. Parking should probably be called out specifically so that it's clear that parking is allowed on that parcel C. And then I would presume there'll be some kind of allowance for the applicant to maintain the parking lot and maintain the stormwater detention area. So all that should be spelled out in the easement agreement. I also should note before I forget that it looks to me like there's a parcel of property on parcel B that needs access to that driveway. So perhaps the applicant can address how that's being handled. That's all I have.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Let's start. Patty, did you have any questions for Chris, Leslie, or Lisa?
No.
Okay. Mr. Chuck?
Nothing at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I had one question for Chris. Could you, maybe I'm just misreading this. This doesn't make sense to me. Under number 5, conditions of section 42.10. And it says a special land use approval only upon finding that the proposed use meets the following standards. And under B, it says the project shall be designed to avoid substantial disturbance of soils, topography, drainage, vegetation, and water-related natural characteristics. And then 2 paragraphs down, it says the parking lot will substantially change the wooded character of the property, require removal of substantial number of trees, and change the natural drainage patterns of the site, as well as the man-made pond will be filled. So it seems like it's exactly opposite of what is needed for approval on this. Do I understand that correctly?
So I think that's a really good point, and it's something that we thought a lot about. And ultimately, we find is that any type of development to this specific area is likely to change the nature of it, whether it was a parking lot or an industrial building. And so I think it is kind of unavoidable for any development to occur here without changing the nature of the site. However, we did include the purpose of the wellhead protection district in a short summary in our recommendation. And we believe that it does meet that purpose. And ultimately, that is why we recommended approval for it.
Okay, so it meets A, but it doesn't meet B, is what you're saying. And all right, Mr. Hoffman, any questions? Mr. Hoffman. All right,
Sorry.
Yeah.
I have a loud keyboard and I click a lot. So
okay.
anyway, I had a question regarding the handicap parking issue and location that they were talking about. Shouldn't that be just like a federal guideline of what can and can't be done? Not really so much a planning commission issue?
Well, the language about it being the closest and most direct route to the building is from the federal guidelines, and ultimately you are the review body for what's developed, and so there's no one else to turn it to. We noted it in our first review because we assumed that anyone who would use the ADA spaces would be going to the building. And after talking to the applicant, it sounds like at least 8 of those spaces, they don't intend the employees who park there to use the building, in which case it may be more appropriate to have them closer to the vans that they'll use for their work.
Makes sense, sure.
And so, yeah, so our comments came before we understood that. And we had some conversations with the applicant that kind of made it clear that not all the spaces would be intended for employees to go to the building. And so we want to leave it up to you guys to see if that's a satisfactory explanation.
Okay, that makes sense. Just want to clear that up.
Anything else?
Nope.
No. Okay. Mr. Radke?
No questions.
No question. Mr. Town?
I know in our preliminary, we talked about the wellhead protection, and I had some concerns over the parking lot impervious surface. And Leslie, I want to reiterate again how comfortable you are with the parking lot. I noticed that you mentioned in one of your comments that there might have to be some screening going to the pond. Do you feel strongly with that? And you okay with the pond if it was screened to not affect the wellhead protection area?
I don't have any issues with a parking lot being within the wellhead protection area. An industrial use, if it was proposed on the site, could be much more of a concern than a parking lot. It's the same thing as a road. They're all over the wellhead protection area within the township, so I'm very comfortable with it.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted, that was my biggest concern with the standards. It seems like it meets all the standards of section 603 of the zoning ordinance, especially with you condoning the sewer and the waste and the drainage and the wellhead protection, which slides down to B for the special land use out of that article. So I don't see any issues with it. And Mr. Hoffman spoke to the handicap, and if he's satisfied, I'm satisfied with the explanation from the applicant as well on the handicap. That's all I have to say.
Okay, great. Thanks, Carl. Okay, do we have a applicant here tonight?
Lee Vandermeulen from Progressive AE.
Hey, Lee. Do you have a presentation or what do you put together for us?
Yeah, I can walk through the PowerPoint that was part of your packet.
Okay.
So we're coming before you tonight to ask for your recommendation for approval for the special land use and also for the site plan for phase 2 of the project. And we basically put this slideshow together to kind of walk through the major issues and discussion points. So with me tonight, I have Brandon, who's the project manager and architect from Progressive, and Tammy, who is from TADI, who is the traffic engineer, in case we have any discussion you want to pursue on the traffic issues for this project. So this is an aerial view of the project. Basically, Unit 5 is the building location, which is serviced off Automation Boulevard. And the parking area is within the unplatted parcels to the west. So the wellhead protection runs basically along Grand River and then comes through, basically this is Unit 5 right here. So it kind of comes through midpoint through Unit 5, but the entire parking area is enclosed within the wellhead protection. So this is the site plan that's before you tonight, basically showing where the building is located, the loading area for the vans, some van parking along this side here. This is the employee parking area for the building, and this larger area is the parking for the delivery vans. In the back of the site is the proposed stormwater infiltration basin and detention area and sedimentation. Just to bring you up to date, the Eagle wetland permit has been reviewed by Eagle and was basically put out for any public comment. As of last week, they closed the public comment period, and there was no comments on the permit. So they're in the process of preparing a draft permit. The project will impact about 1/4 acre of wetland, which is primarily just around the perimeter of the existing pond. And there's really no other impacts on wetlands for the project. So they're, like I said, they're drafting that permit currently, and we'll be providing it to the applicant for review and approval, signature. So we're expecting within the next 30 days, we'll have a permit in place for the project. The industrial activity statement basically is very similar to phase 1. There's really has been no changes from our intent for the site. There's no fuel storage or vehicle refueling on the site. No emergency generator fuel storage. No vehicle maintenance. And basically there's no manufacturing on the site. No hazardous waste will be stored on the site. And anything that requires the material safety data sheets will be provided to the township for their records. So I'm gonna skip forward just a little bit to kind of show you what phase 3 is being proposed as, so you can understand why the parking is pushed so far south within the development. But I'm gonna just jump forward here a minute. So this is the Unit 5 building on this plan right here. Here's our parking area. Here's the detention and sedimentation basin. And proposed for Unit 3 of this development is basically this area here and also a building in this location here. But you can basically see that we're going to be fully utilizing the existing property outside of the wetland limits. And that's basically what set our property line on the north side of the parking area, which basically pushed the parking and the detention basin as far south as it has. It also allows for access between the parking and Unit 5, which is what we need to allow those vans to go to the building on Unit 5 to load. So that's the wellhead protection section, which would be the special land use. Next, I'll just walk through the site plan approval documents. So currently the site is phase 1 is operational. parking is being utilized on the existing paved areas within the west parcel. Vehicles are entering and exiting out to Grand River, and then they come back through Automation Boulevard, come around the building. This is the queuing, so the vans can line up and get in order. And then the loading is along the east side of the building. The truck traffic, it comes down Automation and comes to the back in the loading area here. Employee parking is on Unit 4 currently. And so that's basically the current operation under Unit 1, which is running pretty close to 40% of the building capacity. So for phase 2, the changes that have occurred is basically the vans still enter the west entrance for the parking area. The employees would also enter the west entrance. So the employees would come in for the van parking, would park originally in this location, and they're coming in approximately 15-minute waves so that they're not all coming in at one point in time. So the employees come in, park, get into a delivery van, and basically come into this queuing area once again. And as they're called forward, they come in to a loading area here. And then they exit on Automation Boulevard. All the truck traffic comes through Automation Boulevard, comes in the back, and utilizes the loading docks as they're doing in phase 1. And this is basically kind of an overflow van parking, employee parking area. And I'll note this on the site plan, but this is the location of the ADA parking spaces that we're proposing for the vans. It's basically as close to the building as we can get. But like was mentioned earlier, these people that would be parking in these locations would have access to vans located on both sides of them, very close proximity. And the ADA parking for the building itself is located at this location here, and they have direct access to the building. So that's kind of the operation of the facility. The one thing that we would like to bring to your attention is currently, and I'll go back a couple slides. So currently, under phase 1, the drivers come in, they park in the back here, they get in their vans, and then the vans need to go back out to Grand River and then come back down to Automation, circle the building, and get loaded. What we would propose in the beginning of phase 2 is to create an access drive from the west part to the building, which would eliminate those vans needing to go back out to Grand River. And that would just eliminate that one additional trip back out to Grand River for the van drivers before they can come into the site for loading. And I know we had some discussion about that during phase 1, but at that point in time, we were basically limited on no disturbance of the site. And so at this point, we feel this would be a good benefit to the site to allow the vans to come into the site during the construction of phase 2. So this is basically the east site, and it's basically our detailed layout plan. It just details the parking and the location of the queuing area off to the west, the area for loading, and also this shows the canopy that covers basically the loading area, and that's basically just to protect the materials as they're loaded into the vans. And this also on this east side is basically kind of an overflow employee parking and vans to get the building up to 100% capacity. There also is the ADA spaces along right near the front entrance of the building, and then a few extra spaces basically for customers and for management parking. The west side, basically the employee parking is this front part right here. We also are showing a ride share shelter area. There's a number of employees that come in through ride shares, and we just feel that it's necessary to have a shelter for them as they're waiting for rides to leave the site. The majority of this is van parking, and the spaces are quite a bit larger than a normal car. They're basically 27 feet long, and they have 30-foot aisles through this area, so it's a little bit larger than a normal vehicle parking area. And then this plan also shows the detention basin and sedimentation basin on the south end of the project. So as Leslie spoke, that we're proposing full improvements on Grand River Avenue. We have a long left turn lane to access the site. We are providing a right turn lane also. And basically this would be a center lane left turn. So basically all the traffic will bypass that as people wait to make that movement. For Automation Boulevard, Grand River Avenue intersection, there's basically some improvements that we're doing on both legs, both north and south, which would be just striping and providing turn arrows. And then the intersection would be signalized per the county standards for signalization. Both of these projects have been submitted for the county for review, and we're expecting review comments to come back within the next couple of weeks, which we can address for their permitting requirements. So these pictures were shown during phase one. This is the existing building that's on the site today. So that was approved back a few years ago as a warehouse distribution area. So we are proposing basically a canopy over the top of where the vans will be loaded. And there's just slightly higher, the canopy is slightly higher than 14 feet above the pavement, which meets the requirements of the fire department, just in case a fire truck does need to get access through here. But we also do have a bypass lane around the canopy, which would be utilized for a fire lane. This is the plan that was submitted for the lot split. Parcel C is what would be utilized for our project for the parking area. And parcel A and B are up front here. There was some concern about access to parcel B. I guess we can address that in a couple different ways, but the ownership for parcel A and B are the same. And what I'm assuming is that this will be, that parcel line will probably go away and it'll become one parcel in lieu of two parcels like this, because it is same ownership and same developer that would be constructing phase 3 as we move forward. So I also have a number of supporting documents depending on what questions you may have, but we have the utility plan, landscape plan, site photometric plan, and traffic impact study exhibits. And depending on your questions, we can kind of run through those with you as need be. So that is basically everything that I wanted to bring you up to date on, and happy to answer questions as you have them.
All right, thank you, Lee. Does everyone want to hold questions till after public hearing? Is that
That's
fine?
fine with me.
It's usually, okay, all right. Stay connected, Lee. We'll be back to you.
Okay.
Thank you. Ken, do we have people waiting for the public hearing?
Yeah, so let's remind
Okay.
everybody that is on traditional telephone that if you press *9 on your keypad, that will alert us that you would like to make a public comment, and we will unmute your telephone at that time. Again, if you press *9 on your keypad. We do have
Okay.
some callers, Mr. Confetti. I do not see
Okay.
anybody with their hand raised at the moment.
Okay, well, we will open the public hearing. We're going to combine the special land use along with the site plan. Anyone that would care to speak, state your name and address. And if you have any comments or questions, please direct them to the Planning Commission.
And again, to prompt us to let us know that you do have a question, *9 on your keypad is what you do. And I see no virtual hands raised at this point, Mr. Confetti.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Ken. Okay. There's no comments or questions. We will close the public hearing. Bring it back to the commission. Patty, did you want to start?
I can.
If you had comments or questions for Lee
Well,
or anybody.
I really didn't have too much this time because I think I've talked about it a lot.
Okay. All right. Okay. Very good. Very good. Mr. Chuck?
Nothing really.
Okay.
I mean, they're operating now. This is just an expansion in my mind of an existing business. And as long as, McKenna and ES feel comfortable and a lot of the questions were answered, I have no issues with it. So that's all I have tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I still have a problem with the land use and the soil and the pond. Mr. Hoffman? Any comments, questions?
Let me.
Or did I? Oh, did I? Oh, go ahead.
I think we've covered a parking lot as much as we can cover a parking lot. And with you ever watch Caddyshack a long time ago?
Yeah.
And the guy is Wang, it's a parking lot, because the guy's taking pictures of it. I just kept thinking that. But anyway,
Good. I'm on a conference call, Planning Commission.
so if none of the people that know more about wellhead protection have any problems, then I don't have any problems. And I guess, I don't know, this is kind of stupid to go back, but if you have handicap parking for the drivers, aren't the drivers needing to go and lift a certain amount of weight and deliver parts to a house or whatever like that? So why would you have handicap parking for people driving the vans? I guess that's just an odd thing for me, but whatever. You're pretty much exempt from handicap. You're delivering something over like 30 pounds and need to carry it somewhere, but that's just my federal stupid guideline neurosis.
All right. Okay, very good. Mr. Hoffman, thank you. Mr. Radke?
Nothing for me.
Nothing. Okay. Mr. Town?
No, again, I'd reiterate that I think it meets the standards. We've been through this. Our consultants have done a great job. I'm very confident in the wellhead protection with the pond and Leslie's comments. So I'd be willing to move them both forward.
All right. Sounds good. Is that a motion you're going to make? Any other? Well, go ahead. Go ahead, Carl.
Well, let's do the special land use.
Land use first. Okay.
That's AP-20-10B. So my recommendation would be to the board to approve, contingent upon us approving the site plan. And all the comments that were made today. And obviously there's a couple letters that probably should be addressed. McKenna had 2, which was 4/7/20 and 6/4 of 20. And CES had 2 as well, 5/10 of 20, and the most recent of 6/5/20. And also, I'd like to add, again, reiterate Lisa's comment on the easement and the maintenance agreement that would be for that easement. Kelly, do you have all the information for that? Okay, thank you. That would be my motion.
Does that include contingent upon the permit, the required permit for the wetlands?
Sure, let's add that to it. Looks like there's not going to be an issue, but sure, let's add that. And if you're going to do that, let's add the road commission. Contingent upon the road commission approving the project.
Okay, very good.
Good eye, Mike.
Okay, we have a motion.
Support.
Who's that, Mr. Racky?
Yes, sir.
Supported? Okay. Any other comments? Okay, Kelly, if you take roll.
Tricia Carconi,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Michael Compatibility,
No.
Stefan Hoffman,
Yes.
Carl Town,
Yes.
Kurt Radke.
Yes.
All right, very good. Very good. All right, let's go on to phase 2 site plan. Who wants to step up?
I'd make a motion to the board to approve AP-20-10A, which is phase 2 of the site plan. And again, we talked about the light poles coming down the 22 feet, the handicap spots that the planning commission agrees to where they are in the site plan. And the confidence we have in the special land use. So that would be my motion, contingent upon the board approving the special land use.
Very good.
Support.
Yeah,
Kurt
motion
Radke.
support by Mr. Radke. Any other comments? Kelly, if you take roll.
Carl Town,
Yes.
Kurt Radke,
Yes.
Stefan Hoffman,
Yes.
Michael Compatibility,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Tricia Carconi.
Yes.
All right, very good. Congratulations, Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next up, Chris, you'd start us off on AP 20-14B Wallbridge spec building special land use.
Yeah, so the good news is we have Brian in the meeting now. And so I'm gonna let him take over, but thank you for having me tonight, and I hope to see you guys in a couple weeks.
Good, thank you. Good job.
Good evening, all. Thank you for allowing me in late. I'm gonna pop the plan up in front of you here and run through our special land use and site plan reviews. The site plan review that we have submitted is dated May 14th of this year. And the facility itself is a fairly large distribution center, warehousing center. And as it's proposed, there are no specific tenants at this point in time. So one of the things that we'll talk about in terms of the special land use review is this building itself is in the wellhead protection district. So any of our industrial uses in the building will require special land use review. And so we can do that one of two ways. We could either do that as a blanket special use approval today, or as tenants are brought forward and specifics of the operation are addressed, we can bring forward those individual tenants as special land uses in the future. The building itself, though, is 280,000 square feet. It's on the southwest corner of South Hill Road and Grand River Avenue. Um, there has been a land, I'll call it a reconfiguration, a division combination already on site. So what you see in terms of the proposed boundaries for the property are in the process of being recorded with the county. In terms of setbacks for the property, we have no issues with compliance. The building complies with all of the front, side, and rear parking building requirements, as well as all of the parking setback requirements. In terms of lot coverage, we have no issues. The maximum of 75% is not reached. The plans show that it's 64% lot coverage as proposed. The building height is of concern and would require a variance as it's proposed right now. Max in the I2 district is 45 feet in height, and as proposed, the building will be 52 feet in height. We have spoken with the fire department about some of the logistical issues of serving a structure of this size, and we understand that so long as they can get onto the roof, some of the firefighting concerns are minimized. However, the 52-foot parapet wall means that access can really be only achieved from one or two sides of this building. So that is something of concern that a variance would have to be granted for. In terms of the architectural evaluation, we note that the building does pass as it's proposed. However, we've suggested, similar to some of our other industrial buildings that have been constructed and well received, that this particular facade may benefit from additional glazing on the office suite locations. Dumpster enclosures are not shown on the site plan, so we anticipate that the trash handling will be accomplished inside of the structure, but we look for some clarification on that from the applicant. There is a chain link fence that is proposed on the west property line, and so we are recommending that that be a black vinyl chain link fence for aesthetic purposes. We note that any of the HVAC equipment is not noted in terms of locations on the ground. As with many of these structures, we anticipate they're on the roof, but we again suggest or look for clarification from the applicants. All of the outdoor lighting standards comply. We have no concerns with pole height or illumination at the property lines. We do note that there is a proposed future sign at the northeast corner of the site. We don't know specific sign details for this, but we do note that the maximum square footage for such a sign would be 64 square feet, and that can be handled by the building department through the permitting process. In addition to that freestanding sign, we also don't know, as I mentioned, in terms of the tenancy of the structure, whether or not this would be one tenant, could be two or up to 3 tenants. And so each one of those tenants will be allowed 48 square feet per facade of the building that they have frontage on. No outside storage is proposed, although we'll note that there are truck trailer parking spaces on the west property line. And per our ordinance, we don't consider these truck trailers as outdoor storage as if they are being utilized during the regular course of business, which we understand is going to be the case here. In terms of parking and circulation, the parking lot as it's proposed is more than adequate to meet ordinance standards. And there have been truck auto turn analyses submitted that show trucks will be able to navigate the entire layout. We note that there's 43 loading spaces on the west side of the building, all of which appear to be truck well loading spaces. This dwarfs the requirement of 5 per ordinance, so we have no concerns with the loading requirements. We note that the landscaping, the frontage on Grand River and South Hill are compliant in terms of numerical plantings on the plan. The areas that are called out for tree removals, there is not a specific count of the removed trees for the site itself. We do note that we anticipate most of the removals will be exempt per the ordinance because they're in locations where there is a parking lot or where the building is going. But it should be confirmed on a future plan. One minor piece of screening that should be addressed on a subsequent landscape plan is on the north side of the northern driveway along South Hill Road. If you can follow my cursor, we are looking at, let's see if I can grab the landscape plan, I apologize. We'll note the northern driveway. The landscaping stops short about 40 feet north of that driveway, and typically we would anticipate that the landscaping would continue down to block any headlights that would be visible from South Hill Road. As part of our ordinance requirements, we do require a pathway on all sides, on all public roads. So we would anticipate, similar to Magna across the street, across South Hill, that a sidewalk pathway be installed along both South Hill and Grand River Avenue. We understand and we'll defer to Leslie in terms of the traffic impact. The analysis has been reviewed by a third-party contractor. Other than that, we would defer to the township engineer for other site plan specific standards. But in terms of a site plan recommendation, we've got a lot of minor clarifications to be made, nothing that would impact the design of the site specifically. And so once those landscaping issues with the sidewalk can get addressed, things like that, we would recommend approval of the site plan. It would be conditioned upon special land use approval by the board for industrial developments in the wellhead protection district, that a variance be granted for the height of the building, and that any of the other conditions of the other consultants and staff be addressed. In addition to those standards, because this is a special land use for the structure and the infrastructure associated with it in the I2 district, the project should be subject to our special land use review standards in the ordinance. The first of which is compatibility with adjacent uses. This is an area, of course, we have planned for a long time for industrial development, so we have no concerns with the ability to achieve compliance with our master plan. Same thing with our zoning ordinance. Once those site plan issues can get addressed, we believe that it will comply with the zoning ordinance. We understand that public sewer and water will be utilized for the facility, and as long as there is capacity in the system for this use, we see no negative impacts on adjacent properties or the rest of the public. Again, I'll defer comment on the impact of traffic to the study. There have been no detrimental effects that have been identified at this point in time. Again, without tenants, we don't know if there's going to be any sound or odor or any of those types of things associated with the use. Although we will note that in general, warehouse uses are not are not typically known to produce a lot of odor and things like that. Noise can potentially be an issue, especially on the loading docks. And so some screening and addressing some of those impacts as best we can using landscaping and the significant setback that is present should minimize some of those. Then the other piece to that is that it's anticipated that any user to the west will be of an industrial character as well. And so we wouldn't anticipate a lot of conflict in terms of the sound and potential uses. I'm going to skip down to economic well-being of the community, which is something that we always look at. You know, the site is over 1,800 feet from the nearest residential parcel and along our industrial corridor. So we think this is a net positive for the economic side of the township, and we don't anticipate that there will be any negative impacts on our existing residents. Standard number 9 is compatibility with the natural environment. You know, the site is vacant today, so infiltration and things like that are of a relatively agricultural character. The lot itself is well within the standards we have for industrial developments and lot coverage, and there really isn't a substantial amount of valuable natural resources that are identified on the site. It's not very heavily wooded. While there are some noted regulated wetlands, they're relatively small and don't appear to be contributors to the creek system, the drainage system. We just don't see a lot of value to what is present on the site. And so we don't see a negative impact as long as stormwater can be managed appropriately on the site. Moving into our standards for the wellhead protection overlay district, I think this gets into where we want to have a discussion about the standards as they apply to an empty structure versus the standards as they apply to an occupied structure. You know, a list of regulated substances is not something that we have at this point in time without a tenant. There are no noted underground tanks or storage areas or things like that associated with the plan, so that's something that can be met today. There isn't any noted contamination on the plans, no negative environmental impacts identified. And then also we see that, or we don't believe that there are any negative impacts to the quality or quantity of water available in the overlay district as a result of the project. Final standard for wellhead protection is prohibited uses. Of course, this isn't a facility that we would allow tenancy in with a prohibited use of any time, although the I-2 district is it is definitely our heaviest and most intensive land use category for our zoning ordinance. So if in the future something were to change from the distribution type uses, it would be a situation where a potential tenant could be of a fairly intense use, but at this point in time, we don't see any prohibited uses that are proposed. So again, based on this, we believe that the special land use standards can be achieved for the project. We note that we would recommend approval subject to site plan approval and all of the ordinance compliance concerns that need to be achieved during that process. Item number 2, that the traffic consultant finds that any impacts are reasonably accommodated or improvements can mitigate any impacts that are foreseen. And then we would like some clarification from the Planning Commission on how you would like us to address future tenants of the building and how we would go about evaluating those wellhead protection criteria, whether administratively or whether they should come back to the Planning Commission. With that, I can take any questions.
All right, thanks, Brian. Any questions from the commission? Not at this time. Okay. Leslie.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Oh,
I was
go ahead.
I was
It's all right.
muted. I have one
It's okay.
question.
Sure.
Brian, would it be difficult to cover every single thing that any potential tenant could bring? I mean, should we do it? It just seems like that would be really a challenge to capture that today, as opposed to just looking at each tenant as they come up. There would be 3 of them potentially, right?
Correct. Yeah, there'd be 3 of them. You know, I've gone back and forth, and I'm not clear on how the ordinance applies in terms of whether some of these uses
public hearing
could be administratively approved or not. You know, the things that would come before the Planning Commission for clarification on a particular use is, 1, a list of hazardous materials that ultimately we're going to defer to the fire chief as it is. You know, we would of course check all of the parking requirements and things like that for each tenant to make sure that they can achieve those standards. Things like signage are all handled administratively. So I guess that's really my question for you is, do you want to see each tenant, or are the things that we would be checking and bringing back in terms of a public hearing, are those things that we can address or at least foresee in some reasonable capacity today?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, Brian, I think with 7 board members here on the Planning Commission, I'm blown away most meetings by the comments that I hear that are great comments. And so I, as an individual, would love to have these tenants come back before the Planning Commission. We talked about this site condominium with the 10 pieces farther down on South Hill, and we had agreed that every building that was done on that site condominium would have to come back to the Planning Commission. I think this falls into the same criteria, and I definitely, if it's more than 1, they come back. Like it was stated, it could be 1, 2, 3, or 4. With that said, I'll just let the cat out of the bag. There's so much missing on these site plans tonight. There's 18 items that you addressed, and some of them I think are crucial. You didn't think that they were. I do. I think they are. And when we get to CES, she has 21 items, and 11 of them I think are very normal in an engineering review. So I digress.
Okay. Thanks, Carl.
Yep.
Brian, do you have anything else?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Leslie.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to refer to our May 8th review letter, which is in your packet. Now, kind of piggybacking on Carl's comment, when we draft our letters, the top section, we have 9 items in our site plan review, and we have additional items that we say need to be addressed during detailed engineering review. We structure our letters that way so that when we notice something on the site plan that doesn't have to be addressed right now, but when they come back for detailed engineering, that's where we put it. It's not something that is a site plan comment in this case. And I'll just get into the concerns we have with the site plan. Just to note, under our item number 5, the landscape plans depict plantings within the water and sewer easements. So therefore, we recommend the landscape plan to be modified to move those plantings outside of the easements. Item number 6, 10-foot wide pathways will need to be provided along both road frontages. Item 7, the sidewalk along the building and adjacent to the parking shall be dimensioned. It appears that it may be too narrow. Water mains in this area are adequately sized to support the proposed use, and sanitary sewer is available to serve the property. I wanted to discuss the traffic concerns last. We have had the traffic study reviewed. I just received the final report from GHD today, but I spoke with the road commission today and they are finalizing their letter as well. My conversation with the road commission stated that, you know, he believes that the driveway approaches into the site are adequately located. He did have some concerns that may affect some improvements to Grand River, but the letter hasn't been issued yet. When I'm saying he, I mean the road commission. So I do expect that there might need to be some revisions. In my opinion, the road commission those items could be handled administratively. I'm comfortable with the site plan as it is, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, very good. Any questions for Leslie? No, okay, thank you.
Oh, you,
Oh,
wait,
Mr.
hey,
Chuck.
yeah,
Mr.
thank you.
Chuck.
Actually, I want to go back. I apologize. I'd like to go back actually to Brian. First of all, I agree with Mr. Radke. I would prefer that as these potential units come in front of us, we go one at a time based on what they're going to be doing, the hazardous materials, the waste, and those types of things. Brian, you mentioned the landscape on South Hill to the driveway, correct? Going south?
Correct.
If I looked at that correctly, why wouldn't we landscape driveway to driveway? Because it looked like the southern part of that driveway had the same 40-foot missing. Did I see that correctly?
You did, at least on the south side, the berm is continued all the way up to the road. And so any headlights from vehicles parking on the south side of that driveway would be shielded by a berm. But
Okay,
on the
but
north,
then-
that
but
berm
then-
has ended.
On the other side of the driveway, is it open or is it just a berm?
On the south side?
Yes, the south side. If you're
south
going
side
south,
is-
further south side.
Yeah, the south side is just a berm.
I'd almost like to see it uniform if possible. The other question that I had, let's see here. I wrote a couple things down. Landscape. This building obviously is going to be visible from Grand River. You know, we've done a nice job with that corridor. I've looked at it, drove it the other day. It's really taking shape, and I want to make sure that although they satisfied the landscaping, you know, I want to make sure even if they were to add a bit more. And the other concern I had, and I realize this is a zoning board of appeals issue, but did I hear you correctly? 44 feet is our ordinance and they want to go to 52?
45 is our ordinance.
Okay, I was off by a foot. You know, that's for the zoning board, but initially sitting here tonight as a planning commissioner, that's quite a big variance that, you know, I'm just not so sure how that would work out. So those are my concerns, and you know, I do trust our planners, our consultants. Those are my comments and concerns about this project. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jim. Anyone else?
Well,
Eddie.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go.
Well, I just want to,
Sorry.
you know, based on what Kurt was saying and some concerns Carl brought up, when we look at a big project like this, and I'm currently working on two of almost exactly the same size and nature in Flint right now. We're dealing with a huge building, just an enormous, huge building. And the fire concerns are actually more minimized because the ceiling is so high, the fire could probably never reach it. You know, so there's a lot of things that the fire marshal is probably less concerned about the building, but more concerned about what's inside it. And right now we're dealing with Walmart that wants one of these buildings for distribution, and all the crap that they could put in there is a huge concern for Flint. So there's a lot of issues in terms of that. But when they rate on their sheet, it's just called industrial. There's really no such thing as a use group of industrial. You have S1, F1, high hazard, S2. You know, there's a million different categories categories. And in each of those categories in the code, it lists specifically what that includes in terms of combustible and non-combustible materials. And that would be what we would need to scrutinize when these guys go in there, is what they're exactly doing. Are they just storing this stuff, or are they doing a manufacturing? And actually storage is actually a lot worse than manufacturing. You could easier build an engine plant than it would be to store, you know, hundreds of pounds of fireworks. You know what I mean? There's a lot of definitions in the code in terms of what's acceptable and not, and how it's rated. I imagine this will be an unlimited area building because of its size and the distance it has away from all the property lines. So the height, I guess, I don't know. There's no other architecture to this, you know, so I can't determine if losing it or adding it will make a difference. But that's a really tall building, and I don't know if they miss it if they lost it either. So I'm just saying that it's when you get into something this large, it changes the whole dynamics of fire protection, storage, and appearance. So just so you know, it's just not carte blanche. They could do whatever they want. You know, they'd have to be specific at what they're going to do in there. That's all I needed to say. That's all.
All right. Good comments. Thank you. Patty?
Yes. I agree with whoever mentioned the landscaping. I know, Brian, you said the extension, which I 100% agree with it, but you are on Grand River, you are in our corridor. Yep. That you have Atlas Copco right there, you have Magna, which we had them add extra landscaping, and you know, I would like to see some nice landscaping on Grand River. That would be a big thing for me. And I'd like to have some of the things answered that Brian mentioned, because there is such a list. I mean, you know, the freestanding sign, where's the trash going to go? I mean, again, if there's 3, 4, 2, 1 users, we don't know what that is. So it's really, you're just really approving a big box.
Right.
That's how I feel. It's like a big box. But I also agree with Brian and Leslie, who said they don't have as much concern. So I don't want it to go to the admin meeting. I'd like it to come back to the planning commission when their users are coming, so we can make a good and sound determination. And I'd like to know, well, bike or the trail, the sidewalks and the bike paths, or whatever you want to call it. I'd like to know what's going to happen with that, because they didn't mention, there's too many things they didn't mention. You know, I had notes all over the place, but you guys mostly already addressed them for what I was going to say. But I guess those are my true comments. So
very good. Thank you. All right. Any other comments before we hear from the applicant? All right. Very good. Applicant, who's here? Your name and address, please.
Sure. Good evening, Commission. My name is John Ackerman with Atwell, 2 Town Square, Southfield, Michigan, 48076. This evening is Adorno P. from Wallbridge and Guy Toro from Carlson Design Group. The 3 of us will be presenting this evening. Guy is the architect on board, can address any of your questions, concerns about the building, the materials, the height, everything else. I'll be focusing on the layout, the site plan, and Adorno's here to speak to you regarding intentions of the end users, anything from the developer's standpoint. So I'm going to share my screen here. Everyone see that?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So BSB, creative minds came up with that as the project title is more of an internal acronym that just kind of stuck as the project name. So BSB is 280,000 square foot building being proposed for Grand River and South Hill. As you can see on this screen, the yellow is the entirety of the land holdings by Rawbridge. They sold off Magna. We just received board approval for our site plan for the industrial park, which takes up this area on the east side of South Hill Road. And before you this evening, we're here for this parcel right here for the BSB building. Here's the layout plan, and I will touch on several items that I've heard concerns about this evening, as well as some of the letters, in addition to my just standard presentation. The building itself sits in the center of the site, adequately fits based on our required zoning dimensions on the project. We're showing 2 entrance points off of South Hill and 2 entrance points off of Grand River. We did meet with the road commission quite some time ago when this was in its infancy, just as a conceptual to make sure that they were adequate with where we were proposing these locations. As Leslie did allude to, we did prepare a traffic study. We've been waiting on comments for that. They were just received today, and we're confident we'll work with them to understand what they want, and we can make any improvements necessary. But it is important to state that the locations of these drives, so the site plan itself, as far as it sits on the township property, these locations aren't going to move. Everyone is comfortable with those. When we parked this, because of the fact that we weren't sure exactly how the property was going to be, the internal site was going to be distributed as far as uses, we've maximized parking on this. And that's something usually I'm fighting, kicking, screaming till I'm red in the face that ordinances are overparked. On this, we've actually parked this per ordinance plus some, just to ensure that we have the adequate spaces needed for the ultimate end users. On the south side of the site right here, this is actually property that's green right now, but could be developed for additional storage if need be. That still falls within the site plan requirements for lot coverage, and the detention basin is sized to show this is impervious. So if we need to, we'll be fine there. As far as the outdoor screening goes, you're correct. You know, this design right here, there's a certain amount of trees and shrubs that are required based on your frontage. What you see is we meet those requirements. We did condense them a little bit in order to provide, you know, some mass and feel to those. I have no problem stating that we can expand some of these areas, add a few more trees in these areas to extend them all the way to the roads. That is not an issue whatsoever. And as you can see on this plan, we already included in the rendering showing trees going all the way down the western property line. We have no problem screening that as well. As far as waste disposal goes on this, there will be an outdoor dumpster in the rear of the site. It will be located over in this area right here. Screened from everything, away from everything. And you know, that meets the building code requirements. As far as the signage goes, the sign is going to be proposed in this area right up here. There's, if you look at the engineering plans, there's a spaghetti maze of some existing utilities along Grand River and some proposed utilities on our site. So the location is going to be right here. So it is kind of important. We don't want to screen all this off with landscaping because we do want the signage to be prevalent for the end users on the building. But we have no problems expanding our landscape over this way and along these areas right here, here, and here. As far as the pathways go, we've already placed a pathway, a 5-foot pathway. I know it states 10 foot in your ordinance. If you look everywhere around here, everyone has 5-foot walks. They don't show 10-foot paths. Magna had a 5-foot path. Atlas has 5. This is a 5-foot path over here. So we're respectfully requesting a 5-foot sidewalk along our frontage as well. And we would ask that there's some challenges with South Hill being an open ditch road where we need to provide grading for the open ditch down here. And then we also need to berm up our side. So it's pretty difficult to get a 10-foot path to work in there without putting retaining walls in and everything else that nobody wants. So we're asking to allow us to put in a sidewalk down the frontage, seeing that the other side of South Hill already has your 10-foot bike path. And this will be adequate to get down to whoever the future end users are on the south side of South Hill. One other thing to touch on as far as the entrance and curb appeal of this building from Grand River, this site falls about 12, 15 feet from Grand River down to the drain itself. The building pad itself is set about 5 feet lower than Grand River. It's not a lot, but it will be a little bit lower. So if you're in your car, there's a berm and landscaping. This already does sit a little recessed down into the property from Grand River traffic. One thing I wanted to point out that we've been having a discussion with after we submitted this, we had a conversation with Leslie and her lead engineer reviewer on this site. As you see the site right now in the plans that were submitted, we were proposing to save a small sliver of a wetland here. The remainder of the wetland actually comes like this. So the remainder of the wetland that was sitting outside of this area, we decided we're going to try and preserve, and we're going to try and hydrate that with you can see this line comes down. This is a stormwater line that we were going to end here and let the stormwater dump into this area and then let natural grade capture it and come back down here. We've had a lot of discussions internally. I think there's more discussions about concerns about this area flooding out and coming over onto the adjacent property as well. So we did have conversations with Leslie and Brian Kesey about this, and I think it's mutually agreed upon that it makes more sense just to take this out, make it consistent. So the old area is right here, make this consistent all the way across, and just take that storm line all the way down and dump it directly down into, there's a little wetland complex down here. So this is basically a bypass. It's not on-site storm drainage. All that's being handled via our detention system. So that is the one tweak, and you can see that's already reflected in our layout plan. It's just more consistent all the way down. Like I said, we'll provide a large evergreen tree screening all the way down as well. So onto the buildings. Guy, if you want to take over and discuss the buildings.
Certainly. Our principal facades face Grand River and South Hill. We felt, though, because of our exposure from South Hill to our south facade, that we wanted to carry the character and the materials that we're using for this building all the way around. So where requirements state that we've got to provide certain materials and fenestration for those two principal facades, we actually took it to 3. We think it benefits the building. We prefer the product that we're providing, and overall, it's just a better way to address it. Our primary material is precast concrete. They're insulated panels. They're architectural precast. We get our accents in the material through use of form liners, through our aggregate and integral color, and also with a certain amount of trim for the cornice area. So as the building, and you've mentioned it, it's a large building. We were trying to work to break down the mass of it and give some key points. One of the things that drives the overall height is we're trying to address what we see as coming trends in storage requirements, which is getting more height into that building. So the tower elements, the average height of the building is basically 46 feet, but we wanted tower elements for the entries to be a visual cue on where you're supposed to go to move people. And then because of that, we're up at a 52-foot height. Then we have secondary towers that we use to just break the overall horizontal length of the building. And in addition to the change in color, we have a change in elevation. We wanted to get it up above the parapet of the building. And so that's really the driver for us where that's going. You had mentioned that questioning the number of tenants, it's an ultimate number of 4, right? Not 3, but we could potentially have 4. And it's been evaluated from a life safety standpoint to address that and provide proper egress from the building for that. So here you're seeing the north elevation, which is Grand River, and the south elevation, which really is viewed from South Hill. If you'd move on, John, to the next slide. This is our east elevation, this front South Hill. The fenestration, we were looking at doing 2 different things with the windows. One is, this is pretty much planned on being a distribution building. So in that sense, we've introduced lights as a clear story glazing to bring the most light to the most function. When we hit what we think will be office areas, when we've introduced the fenestration at a lower office level height. There were comments about trying to add more glass. The issue we've got is it's a very, very large building. We're not going to get above 10% unless we just throw windows at this for no good reason. And that was more the logic of how we chose what we were going to do and where we were going to do it. So this is the South Hill Drive facade. If you change the sheet, This is our west elevation, which is all the business end of the building. It's all the dock doors at both grade and at building height. And it's where we drop down in the material usage. So this is a pretty standard distribution building from the backside. Moving on. Just give an example, there was a comment about presenting materials. At this point in time, we've not gone out to get actual precast samples. So we're just giving a general indication of what we intend to do. From the neutral palette that we're using in various shades of gray to create a belt line and a wainscot, and to give some scale to this and break down the overall mass, to the key entry points. You can see in the lower left with the precast neutral, we'll achieve that through different levels of sandblasting to expose aggregate. In the center, the use of form liners to get a split face finish to the lower belt on the building. And then we're planning on using a standard tinted glass. So those at this point are the materials. If we're in general agreement, we would start to move forward and engage precasters to develop samples for us that we could present. John? We've generated some renderings. The aerial view is from Grand River. The overall look of the building, one of the main entrances, you can see the extent of truck docks that are provided and landscaping. And then we have approaches from Grand River from going towards South Hill, so headed west in that corner, and then also from Grand River going east.
So one thing I want to go back. One thing I wanted to touch on, as I know there were some questions, concerns about, the building and us being, asking for a pretty dramatic increase in the building height. And one thing I just wanted to point out, like Guy touched on, the goal for the, the design of this was you have a long building and let's break it up and let's add some architectural harmony to this and some elements that actually give it a little creativity. The roof height is at 40 feet. And then we have, the lowest parapet 46, and that will help screen all the rooftop utilities. So 46 feet is the majority of the roof height, which is only 1 foot higher than what the zoning ordinance requires. Again, we're at 46, and that we did have a lot of internal discussions about trying to bring that down, but with current trends about required internal storage height, this is optimal to try and attract the most users into this building. Then you have these other smaller parapet areas where you increase to 50 and 52. So the fire department has plenty of areas where they have easy access to the top of this that's only 12 inches higher than what the zoning ordinance requires. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. Not the whole building is 52, just, very small portions of it. So that's it as far as the presentation goes. If you have any additional questions for any of us, please don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, to the applicant, as far as the dumpster enclosure, you do realize it has to be vinyl or some composite. We don't want any womanized wood and gates that look terrible after 6 months.
Yep, it will. The dumpster enclosure will be created to match the kind of the feel for the building itself. It's not going to be Sanford and Son out there. It'll be something nice.
Well, I'm talking about where the gates open up so the trash hauler can get in.
Yes.
I realize it'll be brick, probably 3-sided anyway. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim. Any other questions?
John?
Yes.
Betty.
Why, even seeing it this way, why did they stop that landscaping there? Do you have any idea? That is so odd. It looks so off balance to me. I'm just curious. I just nosy.
Yeah, again, it was one of those where these are the amount of trees and shrubs we need to put out there, and instead of just spacing them out, let's kind of condense them down to make them look more naturalized in some areas. At the sacrifice of spreading them out across the entire frontage.
Right.
So again, I mean, it's this area we can absolutely add some in. That's
good.
Whatsoever.
And then Leslie, what about the 5-foot sidewalk? Is that okay?
Well, the area that John mentioned along Grand River, if you look at the aerials, there are more sidewalks than pathways. But along South Hill, both Magna as well as Henrob put in pathways that were 10 foot wide.
What did they put on Grand River?
The sidewalk.
5 foot, yeah. So I'm
So why can't they do the
Screen, right?
5 foot
Yeah.
sidewalk on Grand River and the 10-foot pathway down South Hill?
I
That
don't
would
have-
match Magna, right? Would that
Yeah.
match Magna?
Yes.
I'd be
I
okay
don't have
with
an
that.
issue with that. I think that's a reasonable request.
Actually, I think the building looks pretty darn nice for, I mean, I know it's gonna be big, but I like it. I like the material. I mean, I'd love to see it in person. I don't know if we're gonna have that opportunity, but I like it. It's got a lot of entryways into it. I mean, it's a big building, but still, I mean, they've been waiting to develop this property for a long time, so. I'm good with it.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, did you have anything to add?
I don't have any legal issues at this time.
Okay, all right. Leslie, can you address the storm drainage on the west side of the building?
Well, what John said is accurate. The plans we reviewed show that little wetland area, and we discussed it. We were a little concerned that it might end up flowing towards the west. But I would actually prefer to see the entire thing enclosed. And the way the engineering standards are written is if somebody else's water comes on your site, you just have to bypass it. You don't have to detain for it. So it's approvable what they're proposing.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Do we, Mr. Hoffman?
Like I said, I've been dealing with these enormous buildings recently, and none of them even can come close to the look and appeal that this one is. I really appreciate all the materials. And when you say the building is this high, you know, they have architectural licensing for accents and spires and entryways and things like that. And I think my colleagues all know I can't stand a building you can't figure out where to go into. And in this case, it needs those kinds of elements on it. I like the way it's broken up. The only thing, and I'll say this out loud, and it reflects nothing on the building at all, but why can't these big buildings use their signage as decoration also? You know what I mean? Like I begged Magna to do their, you know, sign, because that's the only nice thing about that building is their sign. But
I agree.
You know, I just think you have a great opportunity to market something, and when anyone drives down that road, they can see some sort of large decorative signage and remember that. I just think, you know, why don't, you know, companies incorporate more of an architectural signage as a symbol? But that's just me. But I love the building, and I see from this presentation you've, you know, indicated manufacturing or storage or, you know, something like that. It'll all, you know, wash out in the bath. So I think it would be a great look to our corridor that we've been trying to, you know, keep sacred as our gateway, and this would be a good addition to that. That's all.
Mr. Chairman, just a
Okay,
comment.
thank you. Sure.
You know, I will say, once I saw the plan regarding the height of the building, it makes sense now. Initially, I was thinking more, you know, 52 foot high, and I can understand based on Mr. Hoffman's comments as well as the visual. Yeah, that's, you know, I was the one that raised the issue. It's no longer a burning issue, and it still would have to go in front of the ZBA, but yeah, I like it too. I think the building looks nice for that size of a building. So I would agree. And I also agree with Patty. I brought it up. The landscaping is important. And as far as the signage, I believe it would be on the northeast corner. You could still landscape around the signage and accomplish your objective. So I think something could still be done in that corner along with the proper signage that you're looking for. That's all I have.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Jim. Kurt Racky, anything to add? Mr. R. Okay, Carl.
Sorry about that.
Oh, there you are.
I was muted
That's okay.
again, Mike.
That's all right.
I like the building and the project. Think it's great. It's going to be an asset, and I appreciate comments of fellow board members. I'm good.
All right, very good. Carl Town.
Yeah, I like the project. I'm just concerned with so many things missing from the site plan. I'm very comfortable with the special land use, but I myself, I mean, you know, you're talking about retaining walls and what size are they going to be? What are they going to look like? How, you know, the sidewalks are an issue, the landscape. It's just, there's too many things missing on the project for me to want to approve the site plan. So I'm not ready to move the site plan forward, but I am ready to move the special land use forward.
Okay, all right. We do have public hearings on these tonight, correct?
Yep.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Ken?
Yes, I'm here, Mr.
Hi there. If we were to open up public hearing, do we have anyone
Yes, we do.
eagerly waiting?
We do have callers in our participant list. Again, anybody that has called in, if you'd like to press *9 on your keypad, we will be alerted that you would like to speak and we will unmute your audio. Again, if you press *9 on your keypad, once we unmute your audio, please state your name and address for the record.
Right.
So we'll start with the caller. Last four digits are 1218. We will unmute you now. Again, please state your name and address for the record.
Eric Ozog, resident at 53903 Springwood Drive. After listening to the write-up and the explanation and looking at the rendering from the Walbridge and Carlson design, I guess I would support the variance for the higher height, being that it looks like they've made a great effort to make this curb appeal to potential tenants and giving it a lot of different opportunities to bring business into Lyon Township. As far as the landscaping goes, I am in support of the comments made by the planning committee. It sounds like the group, Walbridge and Carlson Design and Atwell, are all in support of meeting those expectations as well.
All right, very good. Thank you, Eric.
Okay, Mr. Completti, we see no other virtual hands raised at this point.
All right, well, we will close the public hearing. Thank you.
So this is Adorno. Is it appropriate to make a statement for you guys?
Now, who is this?
This is Adorno Peachnini with Walbridge.
Okay, sure.
So first of all, I'd like to thank the Planning Commission for considering our site plan. I know most of you. I also sit on the DDA board myself for the last 4 or 5 years. And the Walbridge team and the Ricolta family have owned this property for about 40 years. John Ricolta, our former CEO, has great affinity for this property, and we have had many offers and many different things happen, and it's always been greeted by, no, you know what, we want to own it, we want to put our stamp out here. And we provide global construction services to major corporations, Fortune 50 companies and so forth. So we feel that we bring best in class design and construction to this site, and we would really like to demonstrate that here. That's why, the industrial park that we got approved last week by the township board is a tougher site because of the wetlands and the natural features. So that's why we ended up with small lots instead of one big building, because you couldn't really fit it there appropriately. But the remainder of these sites, we've been working on master plans and ideas and so forth. And this here is really launching you know, our park and our site for development. So again, you know, thank you, and you know, we have a commitment to Lyon Township. We've been a longtime resident, landowner. We're the major funders of the sewer and so forth expansion there. So we are very active, and I just want to thank you again and demonstrate to you our commitment to Lyon Township.
Great. Thank you for the comments. Back to the commission. Well, where do you want to go? It sounds like, Carl, you're thinking two different things here for this project, correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that they should be able to get our confirmed commitment with the special land use, but shore up the site plan and come back to us.
Okay.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to make a motion to recommend approval to the board contingent upon the site plan approval for AP-20-14B for the special land use. And that would include all the information that we talked about tonight, the CES letter from 5/8 and McKenna letter from 5/14.
I'll support that.
Was that Mr. Chuck?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
this is Lisa. You may want to consider also making it contingent upon approval of the variance for the height.
Oh, good point. So moved. Great point, Lisa.
Kelly, you have that?
I do.
Okay. Approval. Okay. Motion and support. Any other comments? All right, Kelly, if you take roll on this, please.
Patricia Carconi,
Yes.
Jim Tuck,
Yes.
Michael Concliti,
Yes.
Stefan Hoffman,
Yes.
Carl Town,
Yes.
Kurt Radke.
Yes.
All right. Very good. Then on the site plan, Carol, you want to make a motion and see where it goes?
Mike, can we talk about that
Yes.
first? I
Sure.
wanna see, I would like to talk about that a little bit. I mean,
Yeah,
if
please.
our planner and our engineer are saying they have no problem with that, I mean, I hate to hold up a building for another month. We just went through this COVID-19 that put every single thing behind, everything. And I mean, I think these are all issues that are going to be a lot more simpler than we think. And if they can be worked out, I mean, I think about it. Walbridge is, I mean, I can't imagine them not doing what they're supposed to be doing. There's just no way. And Adorno is right. I mean, I've been here a long time, so you know how many things I've seen that were supposed to come to this property? Toyota, an amusement park, and a Kroger. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on, and things that you guys never see. So think about, we are supposed to be we're in the special program for Oakland County. We all went to those classes. I mean, I'm just saying, if these were major issues, this is one big building. It's not like it's got all kinds of things to go with it. It's kind of just a simple big box building. And you're going to hold up someone for a whole month again for this to figure out if they're going to put 5-foot sidewalks or, I'm not discounting that this stuff is not important, but you got to kind of think about it. And I know what Carl's saying, but I don't think they're the issues that you would hold up a developer for a whole nother month. And those are just my comments. I just see it every day that, they want to get going. I understand it. And only because both our consultants really said they had no issue with it. So I don't want to be the one to hold up a whole building for this. I'm just saying, so I'm not in favor of tabling it or any of those. I'm not. So I don't know how the rest of the commission feels, but I just want to put that out there.
Okay.
And those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Brian, why don't you comment on this, please?
Yeah, as the commissioners were talking, I was running through my list here. And the things that we're talking about, some of which have already been addressed by John during his presentation tonight. The first is the building height, and the variance, of course, is going to be important, but the architect has talked about some of the challenges with additional glazing on the architecture. The dumpster location has been addressed, and I do concur with John that we're not really bumping into any lot coverage limits, so carving out a location for the dumpster closures will not be a problem. Our fencing comment is minor.
So what sticking points clear out?
The sticking point to me is it's really the one that requires the variance. The other items are minor, and I'm confident that we can address them in terms of the landscaping and the sidewalk. Will have a little bit of an interplay, right? And we'll take a look in coordination with Leslie for how the grading is affected to install those features, but I think they're minor. I really do.
Okay. All right.
Brian, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
a
Sure.
question for Brian. Brian, were these, somebody's got a dog barking. Brian, were these, we've had developers come in with plans that have been missing, that have had huge gaps, and that was very frustrating for the board. But in this, the issues that you just addressed, was this, in your opinion, was the COVID-19 thing part of that, or was there, did the developer in good faith, was there, how do I say it politely? Did they drop the ball, or were they not responsive to you, or was there anything that they were driving that you felt they just didn't take it as serious, or?
Well, that's a difficult question, but I'll answer with a example. The landscaping is something that they're going to go back and address, right? But the actual ordinance requirement has been hit. It's just a stylization,
right?
And can you put this here? Can you address this issue here? So while there are some big concerns with the potential design, they've actually hit the ordinance requirement. So
exactly. So they didn't do anything wrong there.
I don't think so. No.
Right. I agree. Okay.
Because
I understand where Carl's coming from. It's been frustrating over the last couple of years with some of the developers, but I don't think, I'm looking at the CES notes and the comments. I just, I kind of lean, I understand and appreciate Carl's comments, but on this one, I think if they're minor and planners and engineers are okay with it, and most of them have been addressed, I'm okay with it. I don't want to hold it up.
Let me ask you this question then. Has everybody come to succumb, for example, on the sidewalk on pathway on South Hill? The applicant said, and it's not in his plans, that he wants to put the money on the sidewalk fund. But yet, and when the applicant talked about it, he talked about berming up, and that's going to affect whether the sidewalk goes in or not. Well, we don't even get a chance to see that, to see how it would affect it. And that's just one item. But, that's my approach. And, This is a 7-member board, but I'm not willing to move that site plan ahead.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm ready to make a motion. Make a motion AP-20-10A, move forward to the Board of Trustees based on the information provided by McKenna as well as CES, contingent upon the issues that were cited. And that's my motion.
I'll support Patty Carconi.
Mr. Chairman, will there be any, can we discuss this a little bit?
Sure, yeah, before we vote, you
Always
bet.
discussed after a motion, always.
Yeah.
To Carl's point, Mr. Towns' point, could we address the sidewalk that there will be a 5-foot sidewalk on Grand River and a 10-foot path on South Hill? Can we get the developer to agree to do that?
Well, I guess what we would like to do is put a 5-foot walk on Grand River and a 5-foot walk on South Hill as well, because the 10-foot path is already on the other side and you're not going to get that much. You're not going to, I mean, a 10-foot path is an expansive piece of asphalt. Our hope would be to propose a 5-foot sidewalk along both frontages. But Commissioner Towns, we're not trying to propose donation into a fund. We will build the sidewalks, but we're hoping to do a 5-foot walk because that would be easier to engineer along the frontage of South Hill. So that would be our formal request if possible.
I'm not in favor of that, John. I'm just going to tell you right now. 5 and 10, just like Magna. That's what I would support. It's up to you.
Let me ask Leslie, what do you see the issue with the 10-foot versus 5-foot in regards to elevation and the road and ditch?
Well, to John's point, I don't want to speak for him really, but a 10-foot pathway is not always that easy to fit into the topography. It's almost a lane of traffic if you think of it like that. So it's wider, it's more grading, and you just have to take those things into consideration when you design.
Okay.
I am comfortable stating we can do a 5-foot sidewalk down there. I can tell you my lead engineer was tearing his hair out, even thinking about doing a 10-foot path without the addition of retaining walls. And like I said, retaining walls fail over time. We really want to try and keep away from that because no one wants to deal with, plus you don't want retaining walls in right of way.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the 5-foot. Patty, why? Just for appearance reason? Is that why?
Yeah,
or
I thought
usage?
it'd be the same as Magna.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, my question would be, and I don't know this, I understand consistency, and I'm just curious as to how much those paths are used anyway. I was making the decision, and to your point, I'm indifferent to either one. I care more about the overall project than 5 additional asphalt.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kurt. Yes. I understand the need for consistency, but there are variances we make exceptions when there's legitimate reasons to do it. And if there's a significant amount of money and maintenance and, if there's a good reason not to make it 10 feet, I understand it would be nice to match, but I'd like to hear from Mr. Hoffman. Does he have a perspective on this? Because you're a wise man, sir.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around. But I'll tell you right now, I am fully in agreement with Patty on almost every project that comes before us that gets held up by a tree not being in the right spot. I cannot understand how we sometimes hold up things for a whole month on the most trivial stuff. And if it's stated that it'll get fixed the next round and documented, why don't we let things go, as they are, and knowing that the next time we see it or the board will see it, that it'll be addressed. It doesn't serve me any right to see this again or the client. for fixing the most minor stuff. So that's just my, first opinion. But
The 5 foot versus 10 foot.
did Magna have 10 feet?
Yep.
Yes.
Then it should be 10 feet.
Can I ask a question? Is there a variance that's required to modify the size of the sidewalks? Is this?
It seems ridiculous to have 10 feet, but the consistency, it's like stairs. When you're off by more than 3/8 of an inch of a stair, you're going to fall. And there's going to be something about someone going down that path at 10 feet and then they hit a 5 foot path, and it's going to be a problem. And they're going to say, why is it like that? And they say, well, you didn't follow your ordinance. I went in the ditch. I, hit my head. There's going to be a problem. It's like that. So you have a precedent and you have to stick with it. And I don't like it, but that's my opinion.
If I could speak real quick.
Sure.
Our thought, when we were looking at this, and Commissioner Hoffman, I agree with you on that. My thought is you have a 5 foot walk everywhere on Grand River, and suddenly it converts into a 10-foot path down South Hill, a much less traveled, there'll be less pedestrian activity. You already have the 10 foot on one side. It just, from my standpoint, it's like if you design a utility or anything, if you design something that's larger going into smaller,
yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
So the 10 foot was on South Hill also, and Grand River?
No, the 10 foot was only, right now there's only a 10 foot on the east side of South Hill. All path systems on Grand River in this area are all 5 foot sidewalks.
Yeah, and there's no other 10 foot paths on South Hill on that side of the road yet?
No. Here, I'll bring up the aerial so you can, I think.
Well, then, I thought we were continuing a path.
No, there's no path system at all right now anywhere on our side of South Hill.
All right, I'll take it back. I don't see the need. If there's a 10 foot on one side, why do we need 20 feet of sidewalk on both sides of this road? It just doesn't make sense.
And there is no way you're going to run asphalt from Grand River to 12 Mile on the east side of South Hill Road.
Yeah.
I'd say a quarter of that area is underwater 10 months out of the year.
Yeah.
And then you'd be talking about doing a 10-foot boardwalk. So
that was my point. It's not used that often either, Mr. Chair. 5 foot is good enough for me.
I'm good with that.
I'll be good with that to get the building moving.
I'll be good with it too.
What else you got, Carl?
Well, I mean, this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to make sure that every base is covered. We talked about the wellhead protection. We talked about the detrimental effects and whether we're going to have a certificate of occupancy for all 4. Is that in writing? I mean, do we get a commitment about that? I could go on and on, but again, I'm one person. If you guys want to move it forward, move it forward. But I just think going into the future, and I agree I want to get projects through, but when there's gray areas, when there's lists from both of our consultants, I mean, it throws me a curve. And I want to make sure that all the ducks in a row. If you want to send it to the board this way, send it to the board. Again, though, in that motion, it's got to be contingent upon the approval of the special land use as well as the variance. So you'd have to add that to the motion.
I did put the variance in there, Carl, but I did not put the contingent upon the special land use. So I will add that to the motion.
Okay.
All right.
And I will second that.
Okay, and that's Patty second. Okay.
Yep.
Any other comments
Other question.
or questions?
Did you, Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt. Did
Sure.
you want to add the additional landscaping that Patty was talking about along the side of the building?
Well, I thought we did. If we
Okay.
need to be more clear,
No,
yeah.
I may just have missed it.
that's okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Which side is that?
Well, we talked
The
about.
east side?
Grand River.
Grand River.
Grand River side.
Slide, yes.
Okay, north
Grand
side.
River.
Okay, north side. All right, got it. All right. Motion and support. Kelly, you take roll.
Sure. Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Patricia Carconi,
Yes.
Stefan Hoffman,
Yes.
Michael Confetti,
Yes.
Carl Town,
No.
Kurt Radke.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And that was for the site plan, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right, Jack, congratulations.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Okay. Next, Brian, AP 20-17, sign zoning ordinance text amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have a memo dated June 4th, 2020, which is a brief overview of the sign ordinance changes that we've drafted in concert with Carol and Lisa. And, you know, I've given a brief overview at previous meetings, so I'll just hit the high points for the public who are listening to the public hearing, if that's okay. But if you have specific questions, please stop me and let me know. Our zoning ordinance rewrite is really focused on 5 main points. The first being removing any content-based regulations in the current ordinance. So recent court decisions have dictated that we should not retain any regulations that require you to read a sign to know if it's in compliance, is the easiest way to think about it. So we've removed any reference possible to a specific message that is being portrayed on a sign. There are a couple elements that we've left in the ordinance that we don't think, well, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, that in general we don't think would be necessarily something that would be challenged. A regulation like this would be an example. An example would be an address sign where we are specifically calling out numbers for an address for a structure. That is technically a content-based regulation, but in my opinion, it's at least a public safety issue to not call out those specific signs as something that we would exempt from the permitting requirements. And so I think we should leave those types of regulations in. But all of the things like political signs that are referenced in our current ordinance, we've tried to remove. In concert with that, we're trying to better define all of these signs by their physical characteristics. So, you know, some ordinances are afraid to call a billboard sign a billboard sign. And so we've taken the approach that people understand what a billboard sign is. So we're doing a good job of defining a billboard is a type of freestanding sign, but you have to meet a certain threshold. It's got to be a certain size. It has to be intended to be read from a long distance. So there are some things that go along with our definitions that are greatly improved in this ordinance. In terms of the billboard signs specifically, we've also cleaned up some regulations on the billboard signs. For the past year or so, we've had a moratorium on billboard sign applications, and several people are waiting, but there was a bit of a gray area in the ordinance in terms of the ordinance used to reserve some signs for township use only. And we think that is a potential liability for the township to leave that in. And so we've removed that. It treats all the billboard signs the same. And we're essentially capping the number of billboards to however many we have today. I believe the number is 14 sign faces today. We've also worked on improving the format of the ordinance. We've put all of the signage types that require permits into several categories. So all of our residential district signs are in one location. All of our commercial and industrial district signs are in one location. And our mixed use district, which also includes our new Hudson regulations, are in one location. Within each of those three categories, we're breaking things down a little bit further into permanent and temporary sign types. So you can check out those regulations in those tables. So there's really 6 tables talking about or describing the types of signs that you can have by permit in the township. Finally, I mentioned New Hudson in concert with the mixed use regulations. In our ordinance today, the sign regulations for the New Hudson district are not found in the sign ordinance. They're found in the New Hudson district ordinance. And that's an anomaly. All of the other sign regulations of the ordinance are all in one location. And so we're proposing to bring those all into one spot for residents, for developers, for staff administering the ordinance, for ease of use. Those are the big topics. Since we presented this at the last meeting, we have made one modification. I take that back. What's one modification of substance? We have made several punctuation and grammatical changes, but I believe Chris mentioned we had initially failed to include wall sign regulations from our current ordinance from the New Hudson district into the draft. And so those have been addressed, and in the draft that was included in your packet, we do once again allow wall signs in New Hudson. So, if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, that concludes my introduction.
Great, thanks, Brian. Any questions for Brian? No questions. Lisa, did you have anything to add?
Nothing specific really to add to what Brian said. I think he did a good job explaining things. You've seen this once before. This is really just a thorough overhaul of the sign ordinance, which is a big undertaking. It's a lot of regulations, so it's not an easy job, but Brian's done an excellent job doing it, and it's really to thrift out all the content and just make it consistent with what it should read. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Lisa? Nobody. Okay. All right. Thanks, Lisa. Ken, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to open up public hearing, please.
Okay, we'd just like to remind anybody that has called in, if you press *9 on your telephone keypad, we will be alerted that you would like to speak, and we will unmute your audio. Again, that feature is *9 on your telephone keypad. When you do, please state your name and address for the record.
This is a public hearing for the sign zoning ordinance text amendment.
And as I look, oh, we do have one here. So caller with the last 4 digits of your phone number, 6031. I will unmute your phone. And again, please state your name and address for the record. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, Robert Swain, 30005 Cherry Lane. Sorry, the delay there between YouTube and the phone is a little odd, but anyway, a couple things reading through this. The most, I guess, the biggest thing I noticed is with the combination of the New Hudson District regulations, it seems kind of like some oversights there. For example, 16.06.f covering the temporary signs in New Hudson and mixed use. There's a lot of things missing there that are called out as temporary signs in the residential block and the office block, for example, like yard signs. So because of the writing of signs being prohibited if they're not specifically permitted, this would lead to, for example, I couldn't have a yard sign at my house. There's a number of other smaller items that I'm not going to bore everybody with. I can send them to Brian if this is, I believe there's a second reading of this. Is that correct?
Yeah, when it goes to the board, it would be 2 readings.
Okay, so the other things are more minor, so I guess I'm not going to waste everybody's time with that. But that was just an example of a larger thing I saw.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Brian, can you address that?
I can. So when we rewrote this, we attempted to mimic our current sign types and where they were regulated as best we could. The way that the New Hudson District is defined right now, you would technically not be permitted to have a yard sign either. So it may be an oversight.
Sorry to interrupt, Brian. You may want to get a little bit closer to your microphone.
Got it in my ears. Any better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. In the New Hudson District right now, the ordinance would not allow for a bandit type sign or a temporary sign like you're talking about, other than it does allow for political signs. But again, that doesn't necessarily translate over to what we're doing here. I do think that it would be a good idea to include yard signs the same as we do for a residential district temporary sign guidelines as we have them here, especially for residential uses in the New Hudson District.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything? That's it? Anything else? No. All right, thanks, Brian. All right, back to commission. Any other comments, questions?
Just real quick, Mr. Conflitti, I see no
Yes.
other hands raised at this point.
Okay, then we will close the public hearing. Thanks, Ken. All right, back to the commission. Someone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
There you go.
Brian, we're gonna add that change that the caller, Robert Flan, if I got his name correct.
I think it's a good idea.
Robert Swain.
Swain?
Yes, Robert Swain.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Carl. Then I make a motion to approve AP-20-17, Article 16 on signs with the Robert Swain comments that change. Based on the comments from our planner, McKenna, and our attorney.
That'd be a recommendation to the board.
Yes, thank you, Carl.
Yep. I support.
Okay, I have a motion and support. Any other comments? Kelly, take roll, please.
Kurt Radke,
Yes.
Carl Town,
Yes.
Stephen Hoffman,
Yes.
Michael Conflitti,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Patricia Carconi.
Yes. Good job, Brian.
All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, one more. AP 2019 Private Roads Zoning Ordinance Text Amendment. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is an item that was introduced at your last meeting, and we have scheduled a public hearing for this evening based on our hope to push through some private road ordinance amendments relatively quickly, but we want to give them some thorough thought as well. Since we presented to the Planning Commission several weeks ago, the Township Board has had a chance to review a draft, and we've incorporated a few of their comments into the modified ordinance. So what you have in front of you is a combination of the draft that was presented last and several minor modifications, but really clarifications in terms of the process for approval. So as a very broad overview, the township, at least as far as we can tell, since 2009, has not permitted private roads. And these modifications would allow private roads in limited capacities. These ordinance amendments come to you in two forms this evening, or really in two parts. And the public hearing is specifically on the zoning ordinance amendments that are part of section 12.09 of the zoning ordinance. You have them in a clean version and a red line version, so you can follow along with what has changed or what we are proposing to change. But in general, the section 12.09 amendments that are subject to the public hearing tonight modify existing language and graphics in the ordinance to specifically allow private roads. And then the regulatory standards, which are outside of the Planning Commission's direct purview, but you can certainly comment, and we specifically want to go over some of those, are under the Township Board's jurisdiction. So these section 12 ordinance amendments talk through things like we are going to open up and allow for private roads within the township. We are requiring that any private roads that serve non-residentially used parcels have to be, they have to meet the requirements for public roads through the Road Commission. We've also gone through and worked with Leslie on updating the dimensional requirements or clarifying some of the dimensional requirements of our streets as they're defined in this section of the ordinance. Like for instance, today we call out 27 feet of pavement, curb and gutter in a lot of instances, but really the clarification should be that we mean 27 feet from the back of curb to the back of curb, and your actual pavement drivable surface is 24 feet. So things like that are updated in that table. I'll stop there and ask if there are any questions on the updates or that we are proposing to the zoning ordinance standards specifically.
Any questions?
No.
Questions?
None.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
Brian. Leslie, did you have something to add?
No, only if you have questions.
Okay. Lisa?
No legal comments on this.
All right.
Okay, then the second portion is the Chapter 36 private roads, which are our regulatory standards. So this is what, if you make a recommendation and it passes that we modify the zoning ordinance, then these standards start to come into play if somebody were to propose a private road within the township. We would allow them to construct a private driveway that's up to 330 feet in length that would serve 2 residences. We would allow for gravel private roads of up to 1,000 feet in length for up to 6 residential lots. And we would allow for paved private roads up to 1,500 feet in length that could serve up to 15 lots. We have also noted that private roads will be administratively reviewed, similar to how we handle lot split applications today. But this would be limited to instances where no planning commission or township board is required for the review. So in any PD or any average lot size development or any site condo where the planning commission and the township board review a project today, that would still be the case going forward. We would just allow a private road to be included as a portion of that review. Otherwise, if somebody is able to divide their land under the Land Division Act, we would review those completely administratively. So the planner, the engineer, the attorney, fire marshal, we'd also get in contact with the road commission to discuss with them approach locations. The typical review that we do for almost any project today would all be handled. It would still be completed. It would just be done administratively, and the final authority to approve that would be with the township supervisor based on those recommendations. Also included in this ordinance is some clarification or just reorganization, I'll call it. Today, things like access easements and maintenance agreements, they're kind of, the regulations for those are they are found sporadically throughout the private road ordinance as it's laid out in our ordinances today. But Leslie made some good recommendations in terms of those are things that don't necessarily need to be reviewed by everybody. They can be reviewed once the layout is approved and an applicant knows that they're going to be able to proceed as designed, and they can start working through some of the legal details and through engineering details during the detailed engineering phase of the process.
So Brian, for say easements or private drives for two residents, there's no requirement of gravel or paved?
There is not, and as far as I'm aware, we do not require a paved driveway today.
Or gravel either? It's just, it could be just two path or two lane path, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie, but I think you are permitted to have a two-track driveway.
Yes, except for when you're in a condominium project, then the master deed and bylaws basically dictate that they be paved.
Okay.
But on large acreage properties, you can have either.
All right. What's large acreage considered?
Well, I guess I should say a non-subdivision lot.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Very good. Thanks, Brian. Ken?
Yes.
If you could open up, we're going to open up public hearing for AP 20-9 private roads text amendment.
We currently have no telephone callers in the meeting, Mr. Compatibility.
All right, you're dropping off here, 9:30. Okay, all right, then we will close the public hearing. All right. Well, if there's nothing else to add, we could entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion
Please.
to approve. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
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 Make a motion to approve AP-20-19 private roads. Based on comments from McKenna and CES, our engineer, and no comments from our attorney.
It would be moved forward to the board, correct?
Thank you.
Correct.
Yeah, if I may, that would be a recommendation on the zoning ordinance to the township board. And I'd also like to clarify, the township attorney, Carol and Lisa, were involved in the drafting of this as well.
I will support that motion.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Radke, support by Mr. Chuck. Any other comments?
Good job.
All right, very good. Kelly, if you take roll, please.
Mr. Tom,
Who?
Carl Tom,
Oh, Carl.
That's you, Carl.
Oh, yes. I didn't hear.
okay,
I'm getting the beer.
Stefan Hoffman,
Yes.
Michael Confliti,
Yes.
Kurt Radke,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Patricia Carconi.
Yes.
All right, very good. Moving along. What else have we got here? Community reports. Patricia.
Yes, we had a very, very long meeting on Monday, June 1st. It went to 11:23. So I will not take that much of your time. So, because we hadn't had a meeting like we have been keeping up on it, but we had the community reports. Jim mentioned that the Kite Festival was putting on the food drive, which it was very successful. We didn't have any unfinished business, so new business, it was all new business. So we considered an approval for Highland Treatment, a new monthly rate. I think it went up like $200 is all. We approved that for the wastewater system, not the water. We already have a contract with him for the water. We had a consideration and introduction of the new Hudson lot coverage regulation text amendment. We had that was approved. We had the consideration of the introduction of an ordinance to amend the solar energy system, which we had, and we approved that. We had a consideration of line crossing plan development amendments. And that was the Watermark residential preliminary review. And that passed, but that passed 5-2. And then we had the ZOT, which passed 6-1. Then we had the Walbridge Industrial Park site condominium review. And I think the only thing we changed is they're going to try to have a Boulevard entrance, correct, Leslie? And they're going to fund the we talked about the boardwalk, and the board agreed 100% that we don't want to see that because it's probably nothing's going to go south of that. So I was pretty shocked actually, but they agreed to that, and they will be putting some kind of money into the sidewalk fund. Leslie will be working on that, and that'll get approved through, I think, the admin. We already approved this, but we have to get the board resolution. We had the consideration to approve the amendment to ITC service agreement with Oakland County. And what that is they're waiving all their fees to the customers. Anything, if you use a credit card, they're waiving all fees for everything due to the COVID-19. So our township went along with Oakland County, and we got the resolution, and right now it's through June 30th. We also considered the extension of the moratorium on the issuance of approvals of permits for off-premises advertising signs, and Carol's office wanted 180 days, and we approved that. We had the consideration to approve some pay increases for the fire department deputy. So that is, oh gosh, I can't think of his name all of a sudden, but Ken made a great case about through this COVID, he found that quite a few firefighters really stepped to the plate, and he wanted to hire another full-time person, but taking someone else off. So it's all gonna go, but we approved that, and the request to hire a full-time firefighter, another one. So we approved all of that. We approved the authorization of the West Nile virus fund. That's expense. It's a reimbursement. The county gives us a grant so we can buy like pucks for your ponds So if you know anybody, if you want to say anything to your homeowners association, if you have a standing pond, we also have the little tablets, like if you have a bird bath or a smaller venue, we have those. Sometimes we have the hand wipes. So Melanie takes care of that, but we have to pass a resolution to get our money for reimbursement on that. And then we took off the consideration to approve the Lyon Township personnel policy. We weren't ready yet. Some things were confusing to us. We kind of mixed the fire department with the hall employees. So we're gonna, Carol's gonna help us straighten that out. And then the last thing on our agenda was the private road ordinance that we had the discussion on that Brian fixed tonight, the few things that the board wanted to do. And that was our meeting. It was really long.
Wow. All right, very good.
Okay.
Boy, you got that in like 2 minutes.
Heck yeah.
4 hours.
That was 4 hours and 23 minutes. That's how long that meeting went.
Brings back memories. We had a couple of those.
We did, yeah. Kelly loves those.
Yeah. She makes no money off of that, I'll tell you.
All right, anything else? When's Irwin's open up?
August, probably 26th,
Oh,
27th.
that's a ways
They
off.
are opening. They
Are
are
they?
open. Yep.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Just motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Support.
Motion to adjourn. Support. Kelly, take roll, please.
All right, Patricia Carconi,
Yes.
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Michael Considy,
Yes.
Stefan Hoffman,
Yep.
Carl Town,
Yes.
Kurt Radke.
Yes.
Mr. Chuck came inside. The mosquitoes are too bad. You need to pick up some of those pucks.
No, it was getting too dark. But yeah, I sat out on the porch tonight. It was a very good meeting, by the way, everybody. I
All
thought.
right. Good job, everybody.
Good night.
All
Goodbye.
right. Good night.
Good job, Mike.
Thank you.
Hi, good
Thanks,
job.
Ken.
Hey, Carl.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. Ken, we're all set?
We're all set. Just have to let YouTube wind down here for a few seconds.
All right. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Patty.